Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the MEC Podcast Series. My name is Nainika, I'm your host. Today's title is From Student to Startup, Arcube's Journey with MEC. And we have with us Prith and Harvey, co-founders of Arcube, which is an innovative travel technology startup. So, welcome, first of all, to the MEC podcast series. Thank you so much for agreeing to be our guests. Could you both introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your background, like what you studied and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Harvey. I study finance. I'm a third year student at the University of Manchester. I've got a background in finance traditionally. Before I came to uni, I've done quite a few internships of banking, wealth management, insurance, those kind of things. And I grew up on the Isle of Man, which is a small island not far from here. It's about a half an hour flight. But yeah, I had a background in those kind of things, come to uni to study it further. And then obviously that's where we've started Arcube from.
Oh, that's great. Prith?
Yeah, so similarly, I'm from India, and I was always into startups where I started first company when I was 16. It was in the education space where essentially like consulting for students who just passed out of IB and A levels to help them get into universities in the US and UK. And I did that for about a year, scaled it to a decent amount of revenue. And yeah, essentially met Harvey during our first year at the university through a society called Accelerate Me, but of course we can talk more about that as well.
That's interesting. It's great how you two have like quite different backgrounds, but then, you met and now we have Arcube. So we'll get right into it. So what, after you guys met, what inspired you to start Arcube and how did you come up with the idea, really?
Well, I mean, it wasn't exactly the first idea we came up with. So because we were both in Accelerate Me, it was quite easy to actually find out, okay, people at the society, they like entrepreneurship, they like business. And essentially we were both in the team to pick and select the startups. So we were just chatting and we sort of came to know each other through that role. And I think our first idea was business cards. So like you would be able to have like an NFC related business card. Turns out that already exists, so we couldn't do that. And then it was just idea after idea after that, applying to a few different competitions. And then eventually we sort of came across the technology that underlies our tech now, which was blockchain, really. And from that we've sort of built the company and built the tech around that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a few, what we are doing now wasn't definitely our idea, not even third or the fifth, you could say. So initially, when we started off, I think it was probably in October, so 1 month after uni started. We were looking for, we were looking for anything to do. I think actually before business cards, we wanted to sell carbon credits to kebab shops in Fallowfield, but that didn't really go through for obvious reasons. But then we looked into NFC business cards. But then we essentially, when we just started looking at, any sort of rising trends in the market, we have actually seen that blockchain was sort of the thing in, let's say, 3 years ago. And what we saw was that people were using the technology for more of speculative nature, more of the sort of fad rather than trying to use the tech itself. So we try to come up with different ways where larger organizations can actually try and get value out of this tech. And that's how we started off with our first client, Etihad. But before we exclusively started focusing on airlines, we started off as a blockchain agency for the first 1.5, 2 years, where we were working with these large corporations to help them incorporate blockchain. So, I mean, a couple of the projects we have done early on are we built a gaming concept for Red Bull Racing, the Formula One team. And we also partnered with the European government to convert their really old stamps into NFTs, which are going to the moon on a SpaceX rocket later this year.
Oh my God, that is really impressive. Like I did not know about all of that. Yeah, sorry to cut you there.
So we have done a lot of weird and odd projects, and it wasn't really like sometimes we made the conscious decision to pivot or to focus on something, but sometimes the market demand pulled us that way. That's how we initially got started, but then we went down the rabbit hole of working with airlines, data, software. And now, we at least in the last 1.5 years, we've been exclusively focusing on building software for airlines, and we launched our first iteration of the product with Etihad as well.
That's amazing. So when I was doing little bit of research for this like podcast, I came across one of your videos on our social media where you spoke about how your journey has been very interlinked with uni. You just said like in the second month of uni, you like, you know, you started like coming up with ideas and stuff like that. So do you want to tell us a bit about like the journey, like how you came up with the idea, the logo, the like stuff like that, and how that was interlinked with the University of Manchester?
Yeah, take that.
I mean, yeah, when it comes to it, I mean, obviously we started the company in our second month. I think throughout the first probably 4 or so months, there was lots and lots of research into, okay, how are we actually going to make this happen? And of course, that comes along with the brand identity, the logos, everything like that. But really, there was a lot of research of, okay, it wasn't, we had an idea, but you have to back up that idea with the amount of research and understanding that you can to work with large brands like we were right at the start. So there was lots and lots of research in terms of actually understanding, okay, making sure we know everything so we can talk very confidently about what we are doing to the clients who may or may not understand it. So a lot of that was done in research in sort of halls of residence. For example, in the uni, it could be in the engineering building. We were in different rooms there. So a lot of the uni has been where we've done our sort of business, for example, over the past 3 years. Along with that, obviously, MEC has provided the office space, which we've used throughout our entire time here, which has been amazing, you know. So yeah, a lot of the research has been done within the uni itself, just on Arcube.
Yeah, I think that's very amazing. And at the very start of the podcast, you started off with, you know, how you met, and that was through Accelerate Me.
Yeah.
So I don't know, for people who don't know, Accelerate Me is student-led society at the university who have an accelerator program for students with business ideas to help them accelerate that startup. So I just wanted to ask you, what was your journey like with Accelerate Me? Obviously, you started not as like one of the people applying, you started as a committee member, as part of the committee of Accelerate Me. So how was the journey from there to like actually being part of their, like, you know, cohort? And yeah, how was that?
I mean, for us, I personally applied to Accelerate right at the start because I genuinely thought that I would be in it to start a startup. I didn't think I'd be in the team.
Oh, okay.
But it turns out I'd applied to the wrong thing. The startup applications weren't open yet, so I was put in the team, and I was like, okay, this is great. Anyways, so of course that's how we sort of met, in both applying as as part of the team. But then, of course, as we were in the team of Accelerate Me, we couldn't also be a startup in it.
Right.
So we had to wait a full year once Arcube was sort of ready and sort of going to actually apply as a startup the year after. So, of course, we were in the cohort the year after in our second year of university. And then again in third year, we've now joined the team again. And now we're essentially picking the startups that go in it. So, yeah, we had a full cohort in the second year, which is 8 weeks of mentorship, going to boot camps, events, that kind of thing, for just to kind of accelerate your startup from 0 to 1. And there's a lot of startups who come through it. They're obviously all from the University of Manchester, or mainly from the University of Manchester, who don't know much about entrepreneurship, and it's about taking them from knowing nothing to actually being able to deliver their product, or a degree of their product, straight at the end of the cohort. Yeah.
That's amazing. You gave a really beautiful overview of Accelerate, much better than what I said anyway. I think this is not part of the questions, but I just wanted to like add it there as well, maybe to you, Prith. How is that, because you come from like an international background, right? So how was the like journey of like, you know, finding a co-founder and then like, you know, actually like founding a business with them? How was that journey like as an international student?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, the reason I sort of picked Manchester is it's, you know, one of those, I mean, when we're talking about at least startup ecosystems, it's quite tight-knit here, where if you go to if you go to 3 or 4 tech events in Manchester, you pretty much know everyone building tech in Manchester. So of course there are upsides of being in that, you know, tight-knit community where you can know potential investors, potential founders, and Uni of Manchester did really seem to have that community that I was looking for. But more importantly, I think the reason, you know, both of us joined Accelerate Me was because we did have the intention of doing something, And I think, having that community for people with, the sort of same mindsets, it definitely helps as well. And there's no better place to be closer to innovation when you're essentially looking to build startups, where, especially in the recent cohorts, we had everything from peer mentoring startups to deep tech startups to, things in healthcare and advertising and so on. I think we're probably in a very unique position when it, coming to the intersection of startups, and especially being an international student as well. But yeah, it's been a great experience though.
That's amazing. And I should just say, like, that's really impressive as well, because I was also like international student, and like, you do come with like a drive to do things, but then there are also other things like, getting used to the culture and everything like that, and being able to overcome that and still pursuing your passion, finding the right person, and like co-founding a business together. I think that's hats off to you guys, really. And you have left literally no stone unturned to use all the resources that the university and Manchester could provide for entrepreneurial students. One such resource, if I may say, is our Kickstarter awards as well, which I just got to know that you applied to. So I wanted to ask you, what was the experience applying to the Kickstarter awards, and what made you win the funding?
I mean, sometimes you just don't really have a choice, especially when you're building a startup. You're very desperate, and you take whatever chances you get, and that was the case because from the start we have been bootstrapped. We essentially used the funds from our previous business to run the company, and we tried to take advantage of any little thing that we could essentially find. And of course, we had the Kickstarters award. I think that was during our first year, where we started working with the first client, Etihad, and we got a contract with them. But of course, we sort of require funding to successfully deliver that. Even though we could really put together a lot of our own savings, we weren't really up there. So the Kickstarter award, we won it around that time. It really helped us. And it's not just necessarily the funding as well, because I think because of Kickstarter is when we got sort of sucked into the ecosystem of MEC, and we got to see the other startups. But yeah, I think we tried to sort of leverage every single opportunity where we got the Kickstarter, but also we went on to Accelerate Me for both the funding and experience. We also got the VFA recently. So we tried to, again, it's not really by choice, it's more the lack of choices, so we have to do it.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting as well, that you did that because you needed it, but then along the way it helped in a lot of other ways that maybe you did not even imagine, when you were kind of applying to that. And you gave away a bit of a spoiler there when you said that you won the tech category this year, because that was going to be my next the next topic we're going to talk about. So yes, you guys were the winners of the Venture Further Awards 2024 tech category this year. So now I just want to know all about that journey, because I think from some of my research as well that you applied, I think, in your second year as well, but you did not get in, and then you did not give up. You applied again, and this year you're winners. So how is that experience like?
Yeah, so I mean, we applied in first year and second year as well. So it wasn't just last year. So yeah, I mean, we applied twice before, and of course, yeah, you can't just give up when something like that. We kept going, we kept perfecting the application, building our product, and of course, we won this year, which is a great achievement for us. And just before we were leaving uni as well, so it's great. And of course, yeah, along with there's a sizable £15,000 prize. There is also obviously the network that you access through going to the actual VFA dinner, the amount of attendees who have lots of network there. You've got people like Accelerate Me who have a presence there as well. So there's a lot of people you can get a network with, and that award just is the sort of award for the uni when it comes to technology. And it's great to see that obviously it's been recognised, the work that we've been doing over the past 3 years towards that as well.
That's amazing. If I may ask, what impact this funding and the networking that you've done throughout the course of the competition, which I don't think is just a month. I think it was from October until March. Yeah. So what impact did that have on Arcube, on the startup?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, of course, we did get that, grand prize, which of course definitely helps to the day-to-day operation of the business itself. But more importantly, it was sort of a pretty good validation for our tech, because of course we managed to prove our software with one client. We're in that stage where we're trying to take this to tens of airlines, and getting an award for tech, that sort of validates probably the merit of what you're trying to build more from tech perspective. And more importantly, we are also currently raising our first round of investment to be able to scale the company, and we are about halfway through it. And during essentially the VFA event, we met quite a lot of entrepreneurs like Mustafa from MishiPay, who have gone on to raise big rounds from Amex Ventures, United Ventures, and so on. And speaking to people like that, you essentially either get warm introductions to investors, or you get their expertise on fundraising, because especially being young founders and fundraising, it's always tricky, because it's sort of a double-edged sword where people think that, yeah, you got a long way to go, and you're probably delusional or ambitious, but also you're also inexperienced. So it's a difficult position to be in. So of course, hearing from these people definitely helps us. And if you are speaking to a founder who has previously raised from an investor before, and them recommending you to their investors, essentially is a form of validation in itself, because of course the entrepreneur who has been doing it for significantly more years than you also believes in you, but also the investor, has a certain amount of respect or regard for that entrepreneur that they invested in, and getting an introduction through them obviously helps as well. So I think I'd say it's definitely about funding as well, but we also managed to get a few connections to airports and airlines while we were going to that VFA networking and the awards dinner night as well. But overall, it's been a positive experience. So there are still some things that are in the pipeline, which we got off the network, and hopefully they'll convert, and we can probably speak more about it in the future.
That's amazing. I feel really great to be part of an organization which, for us, it's like we put up the competition, we do put in all our heart and do the hard work, and to see the not just you guys winning, but to see the impact that brings in your life and in your startup, I think it makes me feel really great. So now, you guys, you are undergraduate students, and you've gone to do really amazing things. I am just impressed, and not just for this podcast, but I've told this to the team lots of times as well. I am really impressed by the work that you guys have done. So I wanted to ask, how did you guys balance all of that with your obviously academic responsibilities as well? I'm sure lots of coursework and stuff like that. So how did you balance that really?
I mean, a finance degree, I can't speak for Prith because he's doing biotechnology, but finance is somewhat easier than biotechnology, I would like to say. But it's still obviously really, really hard to do that. As you said, there's coursework, there's exams, and they all, especially with exams, they all come right at the end of the year. So you have this sort of time, this crunch time when you really cannot do anything else other than, okay, I really have to do my exams now. But I think it's been just a lot of doing university when we can, at the weekends, after we've actually finished work, early mornings, whatever it may be, but actually trying to get our heads down and get the content done so that we can focus full time on Arcube during the daytime, so that we do still have that time. So, okay, no matter what's happening, you still have time to be able to do Arcube. So it's not exactly easy, don't get me wrong, but you kind of have to do what you have to do, especially when times get tough and either you've got a massive uni deadline or even an Arcube deadline. You still have to, and being flexible does help with that, being able to change between doing uni and doing Arcube, but you still have to put the time into both of them and do it consistently, otherwise you won't really get anywhere with either of them.
That's, oh my god, yeah, I cannot relate really, but that does definitely not sound easy. So well done you. And Prith, you're doing biotechnology. By the sounds of it, it does not sound like a very easy kind of degree or anything. So how is that balancing biotech with Arcube?
Well, I mean, there was no balance. I guess that was a problem. But yeah, I mean, even with biotech, my goal really was to probably, try to do something with biotech and starting a company after. So I think it worked out well where sort of I got to do the latter early on, but I don't know how I'm going to use biotech moving on. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see.
Okay. So, well, okay, that was really interesting. So now we are moving towards a bit the close of the podcast. And I told you this before we started, that I've been using you guys as a success story in all the open days that we are doing, all the, exhibitions, to tell the students out there that it's not just like master's students, postgrad students, undergrad students are doing it. Obviously, like you said, it's not easy. You have to, dedicate your time to it. But you guys are doing it. So do you guys have any advice you would like to give to those students who are in the position where they are like, yes, I want to do something, a bit like you were at the very start of your journey? So they want to do something, but they just don't know if, they have that like doubt
Yeah.
and fear of maybe failure and stuff like that. So do you
Yeah.
have any advice for those students?
I mean, if you take our own experience, a lot of it was, as I said at the start, it was a lot of research around, okay, we've got this idea, how do we actually back up what we're talking about? I think that's definitely the really first step and fundamental step about actually starting a business or starting a startup of some kind. You can't know it all, and I think that's why people fail. Really, they try and understand as much as possible, but they think, oh, I can never understand everything, and they sort of switch off from that mindset of being, right, okay, I can't physically learn anything, I'm going to fail if I start a startup. So you've got to start the research. I agree with that, and there's, you have to get some research and some knowledge at the start, but then you have to get it done. You have to get whatever you're doing, you just need to do it at that point. And that there's only one way to do it, and there's one way to find out, and if you fail, you've learned a lesson anyway. So I think that's the only way for you to go forwards and do it. And yeah, that's probably the best advice I'd give somebody in an undergraduate position. And doesn't make it any better that somebody's doing it in a master's or a PhD. They've still got to manage their PhD or their master's along with a degree or a startup. Sorry. Yeah.
That's amazing. Anything from you, Prith?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably being an undergraduate is probably the most sort of low stakes time in your life, right? I mean, you got no one to care for, you have no real responsibilities. And even if you mess up a few times, you can always spin out a LinkedIn post saying that I failed, but I've learned X, Y, Z. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good position to be in. No one really cares if you fail at this point. And for example, like, we are on this podcast in year 3, but not year 1 and 2, because we haven't done anything remarkable enough. But also it was essentially the process. We failed a lot of times. We still do on a regular basis, but it is what it is. Right now, it probably, like, what we do will have the least amount of consequences. But that of course changes later. But of course, there are pros and cons as well. Like I said, being a young entrepreneur, it's initially was quite hard for us to get others take us seriously, whether that be investors, clients, or the people that we're speaking to. And because when the products we're building is actually being used by these large organizations, even though it could be a side hustle or a small project for you, for them it is high stakes. It's people are actually using that product. Just because you're young, they're not going to cut you extra slack. So you still have to compete with other products and other providers out there. And and it is okay that if you don't, but you just have to learn it the hard way, unfortunately.
That's amazing. Thank you. So before we go on to a very fun session that I have, very, very fun bit of the podcast, just one last question. Obviously, you guys have done great things over the past 3 years. What's next for Arcube? Like, what's coming up?
I mean, I could tell you something now, but it might change in like 2 hours. But
Okay.
ideally, we are currently raising our first seed round. So we've raised about 50% of that round. So our goal with the seed round is to be able to onboard 7 airlines, so 7 paying airlines, to use our software by the end of 2026. So at least in the short term, I'd say we'd like to sort of probably close the round. We're looking to get a small office space in Manchester, typical office space with some bean bags, some pool table, maybe an Xbox, but
That would be
Maybe not.
that would be a cool office to work in.
yeah. So you got to do the typical startup office, but we're looking to get a small space probably in Manchester soon and grow our team, get more developers on. But at least in the short term, we really want to focus on expanding our product capabilities and be able to, sell to more airlines.
That's amazing. And one last question for you. So, why Manchester? Why stay in Manchester?
So I think this is where we've built our business from the start as well, right? So I mean, why the University of Manchester in the first place? I mean, I purely picked it for the subject and sort of the city as well, and then come here and found out there's so many resources around that. But I think staying in Manchester, it's not quite London, and it doesn't have that sort of big city vibe, but that's really great for building a startup. You're not spending loads of money on something like office space or getting around the place a lot. And it still has that, as Prith mentioned earlier in an earlier question, it has that tight-knit community of startups, which makes it a lot easier that if you want advice or you want help on a certain thing, that there is probably somebody that you can go to for them to help you on that problem. And Manchester is probably one of those places where you will still get that bigger network to rely on, but everybody still knows everybody else. So yeah, it's a great place to be able to build that startup in because of that.
Amazing. So now we are on to the most exciting part of the podcast, which is the rapid fire question. So basically, as the name suggests, you have to answer really quickly. So I'm going to start with you, Prith, if that's okay. We only have 3 questions, so it won't take long. So we'll start. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? You cannot take long. You cannot take long.
Answer quickly.
Yeah. I'd just say, especially when you're a student, you might, be stuck into something called analysis paralysis, where you overthink stuff. And, you probably want to put together a business plan. You want to put together a website logo before you get started. But I just say, I know you're really busy, but just try and do, really small things on a daily basis, so that especially if you want to build a startup, you can't really, regardless if it's day 1 or 10 years down the line, you can never really take a day off or not have a day where you're not making progress. So, of course, again, you're working against the odds where like 90% of startups still fail, but, you still have to make those daily steps and daily progress every single day. Yeah.
Amazing. If you could have dinner with any entrepreneur, who would it be and why?
Who would it be?
You're not getting the gist of it, Prith. It's right. Rapid fire.
I mean, probably the founders of Revolut. So let's say I just read a LinkedIn post about them. They have done quite well in terms of revenue, and it's only been a decade since they started. And yeah.
Okay. So what's a book or resource that you'd recommend to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Right. It's been a while since I read a book, but I listen to a lot of podcasts from Y Combinator because, regardless, again, the sector of startup you're building in, you get quite objective ways to build a startup, the good practices, and anything to sort of maximize the odds of you being, having that exit potential or a successful startup.
Amazing. Thank you. So we're going to see if Harvey can beat the
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Harvey, what's the biggest risk you've taken so far with Arcube?
Oh, there's risks every day. You can't name one of them, but I think getting started is the biggest risk that there is, really.
Working with me.
Yeah.
Amazing. And the next question, who is your biggest role model and why?
I mean, I'm not going to be able to answer that quickly. I just take advice from so many different people, from like even my parents doing so much work on whatever they're working on, from their day job to everything they do outside of that, to just role models that you see on sort of like the big entrepreneurs of the world, like Elon Musk, and yeah, even the PayPal mafia along with that. So there's people all around that you take inspiration from. I wouldn't say that there's one specific role model, but you have to take it from different sources so that you get that sort of blended picture of role models and just business and entrepreneurship in general.
I like that. Okay, next question. So if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
To learn as much as possible, really. So I think for me, I've actually noticed that, okay, I might not have the technical skills that I wanted to have. And so sort of learning things and understanding, okay, this is where I lack experience and lack skills in early on, for you to work on them is probably the best advice that I'd give my younger self. Just understanding that, okay, I don't know everything and I need to work on things in any domain is probably the best thing I'd say.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Now, one last question it will be the same question to both of you. So what would be one word to describe your journey with Arcube at the University of Manchester? It's a rapid fire. Go on.
I was going to say collaborative, but it just doesn't sound like a
I don't want to sound like consultant, but
Yeah. It's not, I wouldn't. Collaborative was the first thing that went to mind. So you want the
Yeah.
rapid fire answer? There you go.
Yeah, I think that's good. It does not have to be like like
It wasn't the
bombastic
polished
word.
stuff,
Yeah. And I think the essence is like there, because like collaboration is at the heart of everything that you do, and I feel like in order to be successful, collaboration has to be at the heart of everything that you do. So that's a very good answer. Even
Thanks.
yeah, go on.
Oh, I should have thought about when you were saying it, but I'd say it's been quite rocky, to be honest. A lot
Rocky.
of ups and downs, but here we are, I guess. But yeah.
That's amazing. So that was it for this episode of the MEC Podcast Series. We'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.